one of the first units that we'll be talking about is memoirs. So take a minute to think. Do you know what a memoir is? Have you ever read one before? If you're not sure, that's okay. If you have read one before, which maybe you have in another class, or maybe you have just for your own enjoyment, then you won't have too much of a heads up on what's to come, but you'll have a better idea. But no fear, even if you're like, I don't think I've ever read one before, we're all going to be learning this together. So let's start with something simple. Let's define what the memoir is. I found this quote that says, "A memoir gene satisfies two of our most human desires, to be known and to know others." So, a memoir is basically a narrative written from the perspective of the author. So, the author that's writing it is doing it from their perspective. You might be questioning, well, isn't that just an autobiography if someone is writing a non-fiction about their life? And yes, it can sort of sometimes fit into that genre, but more specifically, a memoir differs from an autobiography because an autobiography covers an entire person's life. Like from birth to death, it talks about all of the facts. A memoir, however, is more focused. It might only cover a very small period of a person's life, such as a couple months or maybe a year. It might span multiple years, but it always has a key way of looking at it. It's like someone has just zeroed in on something that they think is worth writing about. It's also really not as concerned as facts, wherein if you were reading an autobiography, you would probably expect all of the facts that you'd be getting in it to be pretty much reliable. Like, this is a really good retelling of a person's life, where a memoir is more so concerned with the idea of the ideas of like what a person remembers from that time, so it might not necessarily be entirely factual. I think we've all had the experience of remembering something and finding out later that it's like, oh, that wasn't quite how it happened, but maybe to us it felt very real. Maybe it was an experience where you and a sibling got into a fight, but it turns out the sibling wasn't really that mad, but you remember being furious at them or them being furious at you. If you were writing a memoir, you would have that freedom to go in and write about how angry your sibling made you feel, even if that's not necessarily quote-unquote truth. And you'll notice that the word memoir, if you were thinking that sounds a lot like a memory, then you'd be correct. That is where the root of the word comes from. So it's really leaning into the idea that it's a memory that the author is presenting to us to read about something that they found or thought maybe it would be worth for other people to read. So during our time here on Wednesdays, that all virtual day, which will start 2 weeks from now, we are going to be having a book club. So even though we're going to be focused on a lot of very non-literature type things, as we're going through, like we're going to be looking at speeches and dictation and a lot of other types of those during this first term, you guys still are going to be reading a book. On Wednesdays, you will be meeting with your small group in a Google Meet. You'll be recording the video and sending it to me. A lot of times you'll probably have some leading questions to kind of get you guys going and start talking about this. The link is in the daily agenda PowerPoint. You can click the link, take some time to look through the books that are possible for you to choose. Really think about what you think might be interesting. I would definitely say though, and it says that at the top too, if you've read one of these books in a different class, don't pick it. The entire goal of this is that you will be drawing out information from the skills we're learning. Chances are when you go to take your AP exam, you're not going to know the book that you end up having to write about, so it would definitely be in your best interest to be practicing similarly with a book that you've never read before. So one of your assignments is going to be that you will choose a book for book club. In the other class, I had a little activity for the English 11 children to get to know me, but I haven't realized I didn't really have anything planned. So what I'm actually going to have you guys do is practice the idea of writing a memoir. It really doesn't have to be long. I'm not looking for entire novels or Nobel Prize winners, like really solid writing. I'm just looking for you guys to give me a little bit more information about yourselves. So pick a moment that you think would be really, really, really good. Like if you had to write your theoretical memoir, what would be a moment in time that you would consider would be super important to your identity as a person, and talk about it. As we said, remember, it doesn't have to be entirely facts. It's going to be very much creative based, even though you are writing a nonfiction. So think really hard about the way that you're choosing words to paint this scene for me. Like, bring me to this moment for you. And it can be very open-ended. Like, I'm really letting you guys pick just a moment that is important to you. So that is going to be your other assignment for today. You guys will turn it in to me, and I will definitely read this. We might do some activities with it later. And it's more just for me to be able to get to know you, and for you guys to kind of dive into this content and interact with it in a very real way. Okay,